Hello, Hello Saints. This is the Revelation coming with another form of short teaching or a reel. Majority of you have received a promise. Majority of you have received it one way or another, be it through a prophet, be it through the word, be it through a personal encounter with God, be it through a dream, be it through a vision, or be it through an external conduit in which God can use to tell you something that He has planned for you. But how many of you have sat down to actually realize that most promises that God has given you either delays or mostly doesn't fulfill? Now, we are mostly just quick to judge that the vessel by which the word was spoken was false or the vessel is corrupt. But we didn't actually sit to realize that most of the times it could be God directing us to understand the significance or the composition of a promise. So today I'm just here to help you shortly to understand what a promise does. Firstly, you need to understand that a promise has one rule. The reason of a promise is either to bring you out of a current state to a glorified state. That is the purpose of a promise. God will not promise someone riches if the person is rich. Unless the person or the riches that God is describing is different from the state the person is in. Until then, promises are not a statement by God to keep you in the same state. It's to remove you from one state and relocate you to another. And most of the times, for promises to be given, God considers a couple of things. Firstly, He considers where you are. Secondly, He considers who you are. Thirdly, He considers where He is. So if you are looking at the composition of a promise, or let's say before a promise is given, you have to first, if the promise is from God, be in the presence of God, talking about where He is. Then, in that presence, that's where you are. So you are also in the presence, referring to where you are. And you in the presence, what significance are you to God that He should give you a promise? That is where who you are comes to play. So most of the times, you need to look at the standard. Were you in church before you received the promise? If the promise was given in church, that means for the promise to come to pass, God in fulfilling the promise will return to where He found you before He fulfills that promise. Where the promise was given should be where the promise should be fulfilled. So in the fulfillment of the prophecy, in God trying to honor that promise, what God will do is He will come back and you look for you. And if He doesn't find you at that location, there the promise is considered void. Most of the times, some of you might have received promises from God that you are going to be, let's say, in another house, or let's say relocated. And He comes back to find you relocated. Yet it was not Him who caused the relocation, it was you who relocated. In such a scenario, the promise then will not be fulfilled, because God did not find you within the terrain boundaries of a promise. Maybe that location was where the presence was, and the presence did not relocate with you. But this is the instance where God considers the where, the who, and where He is making a promise. So hey, saints, take note of that and mark that as a boundary to check. Were you receiving a promise in a dream? What state of the dream were you in? What state of mind were you in? Were you sorrowful? The moment you are comforted, you have to know that promise has already been fulfilled. So if God is to promise you a husband whilst you are in sorrow, you have to understand the comfort you receive is a sign that you've received a husband. Because the reason God is giving a husband is because you are sorrowful, not because you want to marry. So take note of that. We are spirit, we have life, we have a Jesus worth knowing. We are Hello Saints, the company of Zion.